All right, guys, welcome to the video. So in this video, I want to cover the ultimate guide to productivity inspired by Naval Ravikant for young, busy professionals. Now, as a young, busy professional, managing your time and managing yourself both inside and out of your career is essential for long-term longevity and growth. Most people fall short in life because they lack balance. They potentially make a decent income from their career, but they lack the energy and time to develop a high-quality social life and or a healthy lifestyle. Others manage to excel outside of their career, but lack the ability to increase their income and develop themselves to achieve a desirable workplace lifestyle. The most common are people that probably feel generally lost. They're not excelling in their career the way they desire, and their life outside of work isn't what they desire either. So in this video, I want to share with you a process and lessons from the multimillionaire entrepreneur Naval Ravikant that can help you create the balance you desire to achieve success both inside and outside of the office. Now, before I get into the actual steps that I want to share with you, I do want to start with this. Who is Naval Ravikant? If you're not familiar with Naval Ravikant, I highly recommend you check out his content. This is kind of just a brief summary of him. I want to kind of go through this really fast just to give you an idea of who he is. So he's a highly respected entrepreneur, an angel investor, and philosopher known for his deep insights on wealth creation, happiness, and personal development. He's the co-founder of AngelList, a platform that connects startups with investors and job seekers, and has invested in over 100 companies, including early-stage ventures like Twitter and Uber. He's highly regarded for his philosophical approach to life and business, often sharing his thoughts on topics like leverage, specific knowledge, and mental models. His ideas have been compiled in the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, a book that distills his wisdom on achieving long-term success and happiness. Through his podcasts, tweets, and public appearances, Naval has influenced a generation of entrepreneurs and thinkers with his blend of practical advice and timeless philosophy. So, based on all this, you can probably tell why I wanted to create a video on him. Now, real quick, I first saw Naval Ravikant a few years ago. I think maybe it was about 4 years ago. It's kind of the first time I came across that name. And it was on Joe Rogan's podcast. I know some people have like weird thoughts on Joe Rogan, whatever. But if you get the chance, I highly recommend checking out this specific podcast, episode number 1309 with Naval Ravikant. It's really good. I think it's about 4 hours. He gives a deep dive into his thoughts on wealth creation, leverage, some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today, productivity, and just what it means to be happy and successful. It's a very nuanced approach. And I think a lot of people, especially like capitalists or people who are entrepreneurs, they tend to go the route on just pure make as much money as possible. He covers part of that, and he has very nuanced approaches to making more money. I think they're actually some of the best approaches to making money. But he also goes deeper into just what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to just have a good quality life? So highly recommend checking that out. And if you prefer more of a written approach, if you like to read more, I recommend checking out the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Essentially what this guy did is he kind of just took most of Naval's teachings, pretty much all of his like major teachings, and compiled it into this book. I just bought it. I actually have it. I was kind of reading it recently. You can't really see it, but I was kind of reading it recently, and some of the thoughts he has on productivity inspired me to make this video, just because I think it's such a nuanced approach and it's such a beneficial and helpful approach. So highly recommend you check out both of those, but at least one, if not the other. So before I get into the actual ideas that he shares and how you can apply them to your own life, why should you even bother listening to me? So I do want to kind of give some of my credentials just to give you an idea of why I'm worth even listening to. I'm a former owner of College Conqueror. Basically, College Conqueror was a company I created back when I was in college, kind of in a transition period between college and I got back into college and had already had the company at that time. Pretty much I tried to help high school and college students understand the fundamentals of what it takes to be a college student, a high achieving college student. I taught things about how to get internships, how to get externships, how to study more effectively, how to manage your time more effectively, how to build a better relationship with your teacher, how to sort of navigate the college lifestyle, both in the classroom and outside the classroom more effectively. I'm a co-founder of Affinity. Affinity is a marketing agency. We design websites and we primarily help with lead generation for gyms, primarily through the use of Facebook ads. I've published several books. I think I published a lot of books, but There's 3 official books that you can probably buy on Amazon, 3 or 4 that you can buy on Amazon that are widely known to the public. And one of them you can kind of see on the bottom right of these photos. It's called 27 by 27. It's the longest book that I've published. It's about 200-ish pages, and I highly condensed it. Actually, the font's super small in the book, so it's like 10 size font, and it's still about 200 pages, just to give you an idea of how long the book is. Originally, it was going to be like 300 pages with the exact same font size. I'm a former pickup artist to now being happily married. I used to read about 3 to 5 books a week for about 3 years straight. And then after about 3 years, you kind of start seeing the same concepts in books. So I stopped reading as much. I still do read, as I just showed you with this book by Naval Ravikant. But I heavily slowed down my reading. And to be honest, I used to read more than 3 to 5 books a week, but I'm trying to be a bit modest. So that's why I put 3 to 5 books a week. I'm the owner of Productivity Accelerator, essentially Productivity Accelerator. The goal is to help young, busy professionals get more done in less time. And I have a certain system and certain strategies I teach people to help them achieve that goal. I've navigated multiple industries successfully. I am still currently a real estate consultant. I help people walk through the process of buying, selling, investing, and renting properties. I used to be in the law industry. I used to work at a law firm for a few years. And I still currently work in the medical industry. Currently, I'm the head of business development at a medical laboratory. That's more of my full-time profession outside of Productivity Accelerator. I love it. It's a great job. So I'm still in the medical industry. Former host of one of the top podcasts in Virginia. I used to have a podcast called Meeting Virginia. I'm considering reviving it. I'm still on the fence about doing that because it is very time-consuming to run a podcast. But it was one of the best podcasts in all of Northern Virginia. I am the top productivity trainer in Northern Virginia. I have been named the top productivity trainer in Northern Virginia. And to this day, I'm still sought out as a guest for numerous podcasts. I've been on at least 12 so far. I've lost count, but I know I've been on at least 12. Kind of in the top left, if you're watching the screen, you can kind of see me with a blazer on and a black t-shirt. That's from one of the in-person podcasts that I did earlier this year. I think it was January, February. That was an in-person podcast that I did. So these are just a few of my credentials, just so that way I'm not just some random guy on YouTube giving you suggestions that he's never tried to do himself or that he's never implemented. And real quick, before I get into the actual techniques, if you are a young, busy professional that struggles to get more stuff done inside the workplace and or outside the workplace, I highly recommend you check out my video. I walk through what I call the 3P method. It's sort of a super simple framework that you can implement. The video itself is like 30 minutes. It's free. You can check. I think it's the first link in the description below, but I highly recommend checking it out. It'll walk you through a process that I use to this day to get so much done in a little bit of time. All the things I've mentioned that I did, all these credentials, I've been able to do. I'm 31 now. I've pulled all of this stuff off before I was even like 26. A lot of this I've been able to do because of this 3P method. So if you're interested, check out the first link in the description. Like I said, it's 30 minutes, super simple process, but it'll help tremendously. Now, on to the actual good stuff, the concepts that you should use based on what Naval Ravikant teaches. There's 6 different concepts I want to share with you, and I'm going to go deep into each of these. I'm going to give you sort of what I recommend. It's a step-by-step process to implementing these concepts into your life, but to just get into each of these one by one, in no particular order, by the way. First concept you should apply into your own life is using leverage to multiply your output. And I'm going to get into what all of these mean in just a moment. The second thing, work on the things that you love. The third thing, master the art of saying no. The fourth thing, prioritize health for sustained productivity. And that's a big one. I'm going to get into that again in just a minute. Number 5, maximize efficiency through automation. And number 6, simplify your decision-making with mental models. So, like I said, I'm going to get into all 6 of these. If I were you, I'd probably pull out some, maybe a pen, pencil, some paper, take some notes, because I want to get as in-depth as possible without making this video drag on too long. So, first concept, leverage, multiplying your output via leverage. Now, if you're not familiar with what leverage is as a concept, essentially, leverage is the ability to amplify your productivity and your output by using tools, systems, or other people's effort. Naval categorizes leverage into 3 main categories. First one being capital leverage, the second being labor leverage, and the third being product leverage. Now, this idea of leverage is super, super key to keep in mind. I tend to find that a lot of people, what they try to do is they just try to attack the day themselves, completely themselves, and they make life more difficult. Because like I said, productivity is just, it's sort of it's a product of getting more done in less time. It's a product of achieving a certain result as easily, as quickly, and as efficiently as possible. So to a degree, if you're doing everything on your own, you're not achieving absolute productivity. You're not being as productive as you could be. You need to use some kind of leverage in order to be truly productive. And so I give kind of an example from my own personal life that falls into these categories. And really quick, I don't have it kind of bulleted out here, but just to kind of give a definition of what these three things are: capital leverage, labor leverage, and product leverage. Capital leverage is essentially when you're using money to gain leverage. Does that make sense? So say, for example, you're a business owner. You can use your capital to buy ads. You might want to buy, or you can use your capital to buy ads to get leads, I should say. Perhaps if you're a business owner, you want to get leads, maybe you can cold call. Sure, you can do that. But you might cold call for 5 hours and maybe you get like, I don't know, 10 to 20 leads, let's say hypothetically. You could spend 5 hours cold calling to get 10 to 20 leads, or you can put out an ad once, let the ad run by itself over X amount of days, and using your own money instead of your time, you can get 50 leads, 100 leads, 1,000 leads. Does that make sense? This is just a hypothetical example of capital leverage. Labor leverage. Labor leverage is using other people's time and other people's efforts to achieve a certain result. So a very simple example of this that I'm sure if you're watching this, you're familiar with to a degree is having a boss. You might be a boss yourself, but chances are you probably work at some kind of company. You probably have someone else that supervises you, manages you, or is an owner above you. Regardless of what position they're in, they're using you as a form of leverage. They're one person, most likely, that, say, for example, owns the business. They can't do everything. They can't do accounting. They can't do lead generation. They can't handle all of the different minutiae throughout the day. They can't do HR. They can't do payroll. There's a lot of things they need to do, but they alone can't do it because there's only so many hours in the day. So what they do is they hire other people to do it for them. This is an example of labor leverage. They're leveraging someone else's labor to get a certain desired result. And because of this, that's what makes them more productive. That's what causes the business to grow, or at the very least sustain itself. And then the final thing, it's product leverage. So what is product leverage? Product leverage is just using a tool of some kind or software to get more done in less time. Good example of this, there's a lot of AI software nowadays. Actually, this is an example I just used recently. There's a tool called Opus AI, I believe. And Opus AI, essentially what it does is you can just take a YouTube video, pop it into this software, and it's paid software, but you can pop it into the software and it creates YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook Shorts, Reels, etc. And it does it in about 10 to 20 minutes. I have a friend of mine, actually, he has a podcast. Him and his buddy started a podcast, and he was trying to make his Instagram channel grow faster. And I told him, I said, I recommend, instead of you guys editing videos, which if you're watching this and if you've ever tried to edit videos, it's a very long process. I edit my own videos. Usually for every 15 to 30 minutes of content that you have to edit, that usually takes me about 1 to 2 hours. My system's not like the fastest system. It's good, but it's not the fastest. So maybe with a faster system, I'd get more done quicker. It's part of productivity. It's part of leverage. But the editing process in general, just because of like how much time it takes to think about how you're going to edit, how much time it takes to put captions in, how much time it takes to do, to get certain pictures, certain B-roll, all that stuff. If you're not a video editor, a lot of these things might fly over your head. But if you are a video editor, or if you're at least somewhat familiar with it, you probably get what I'm talking about. That takes a long time. That takes hours for just like a single video. So product leverage. I told my friend, try this software out. He tried it, and his Instagram started to blow up. Not blow up like insanely, like he didn't go viral, but he went from getting like a couple hundred views, maybe just like 2-digit views, to getting like thousands of views. Does that make sense? So that's an example of product leverage. Instead of him and his buddies taking their time to edit videos, which can take a lot of time, they are using software to get the job done for them. Now, this is an example that I've used in my own life. So, like I mentioned earlier, I'm the head of business development at a medical laboratory. And recently we were trying to get a new client. And the client sends over sort of a quote for a bunch of different lab tests that they want done. And so what our job is at that point is to kind of go through it, price it out, figure out how much each of the lab tests are going to cost, and then send them sort of our quote, like how much we are requesting for us to perform these lab tests. This is me keeping it short and simple. So there was a big list. They wanted us to do about 10,000 different tests. Now, you can imagine it takes a long time to actually sit there. Just imagine you have a store and there's 10,000 products, different products, and people want to know the price of all of those products. You probably don't know all of them off the top of your head, which means you have to look them up. Now, I did the math. It takes us about 7 to 15 minutes on average to figure out the cost of one test. This is one test, takes about 7 to 15 minutes. This means, and this is on average, it can take a little bit less, it can take a bit more. But it would take us about, on average, if we did this, if we looked up each test, 1,200 to 2,000 hours just to do a quote for each of these tests, for the combined total of these tests. But we also had a strict deadline. So it's not like we could just spend 1 hour here, 1 hour there doing this. We had to get all 10,000 tests done in like a week or two. So when you kind of have this deadline and you have so many tests to look up, I decided that we should just use software. And so we used AI. And so with AI, rather than take 2,000 hours to look up all those tests, it took us like 1.5 hours, like 2 hours. You just put all the tests into the system, you give it certain prompts, you give it certain guidelines to follow, and it generates prices. Super simple, like a big spreadsheet full of prices. Now, the good thing with this is that instead of us taking all that time to go through and like put in each test and then go back, because we'd have to go back and like review it to make sure all the prices are correct, we saved so much time. Just like as you're reading all this, how much less is 2 hours compared to 2,000 hours? Significantly less, right? So this is the power of product leverage. And this is a real world example. That's one example. Another real world example is labor leverage. Now, I mentioned earlier, I'm still a licensed real estate agent. I do real estate consulting. And as a real estate consultant, one of the things I recommend to people, and this is me being unbiased, because I often tell people, side note, side tangent, I often tell people when they shouldn't buy, when they should buy. I'm not like tied to the commission from real estate. So I can get away with telling people the truth about real estate and some of the stuff that agents won't tell you. If you don't get an agent and you want to buy or sell your house, you're making a massive mistake because you're missing out on labor leverage. Now, a lot of people, as an agent, I see this a lot. A lot of people try to buy houses on their own and they try to sell houses on their own. If you're experienced, do it. You can buy your own house and you can sell your own house. If you're an agent or if you know what you're doing, totally cool. A lot of people don't. A lot of people are not really familiar with the exact process. They don't really know how to negotiate effectively. They don't know how to market effectively. They don't know where to put their houses. They don't know like which different sites to put them. People think it's, oh, you just put it on Zillow. It's not that simple. They don't know how to do any of these things. And so the issue with that is, one, there's a learning curve. Two, it's time consuming. Imagine you work a full-time job. You work 8 hours a day. You come home, say at 5 p.m. And now you have to worry about trying to market your own property. And maybe you have a deadline. Maybe you can't afford to be in that property forever. This happens sometimes. Instead of you just leveraging an agent that can work on your behalf for free, by the way, for the most part, agents are free. They can be working on your behalf the entire day and on the weekends and in the mornings and at nights when you don't want to be doing it, when you don't have time to be doing it. Instead of getting them, you choose to do it on your own and double or triple or even quadruple your workload. It's inefficient. It doesn't lead to a good result because you're probably not going to get the best price. Statistically, you won't. This is just side real estate stuff. But it's also going to exhaust you because you're doing extra work for a minimal return. Does that make sense? So this is an example of labor leverage. This is what it means to leverage labor, someone else's time, someone else's energy to your advantage. So hopefully you understand that. That's the first one, leveraging. That's the first concept to understand, leverage. Now, the second concept, aligning passion with productivity. The things you do daily need to be aligned with your passions to a degree. And the reason why I say to a degree is because there's sort of a balance of, there's some people that say, do what you love, you never work a day in your life. It's semi good advice. There's some things that you don't want to be a career because it ruins the fun of the thing you enjoy doing. Does that make, hopefully that makes sense. And there's some things that are passion, but don't create profit for the most part. For example, this is like a classic example. People always say, if you want to be if you're an underwater basket weaver, then it might be difficult to make money with that. And nowadays, I think that might be actually false. You probably could make a decent income if you were an underwater basket weaver, which is kind of the point of this slide right here. That's kind of the point of this concept. But you got to make sure that the thing you're trying to be productive in, the results you want to achieve, make sure it aligns enough with your passion. And the reason why you want to do this is because it needs to be sustainable. It's easier to do something you enjoy doing, right? It's harder to do something you don't like doing. This is why I think a lot of people, side tangent, but this is why I think a lot of people burn out in their careers. I think a lot of people don't actually like their careers. They don't like their jobs. And because they don't like their careers and they don't like their jobs, it makes it difficult to do this job or career. I had a roommate like years ago, and it was funny because like every day when he'd go to work, sometimes he'd work in the afternoons because his job had like weird shifts. He'd be so upset about it. He'd be like, oh, time to go to work, time to stop what I'm doing, time to stop having fun and go to work. And it's like, he felt that way because he didn't enjoy his job that much. He wasn't passionate about his job. Now, if he were passionate about his job, he'd be like, whew, time to go to work. To be honest, if he were passionate about his job, he'd prefer to go to work. Like, you'd have to pull him away from work. So it's kind of like, imagine your passion is chemistry. If your passion is chemistry, you could do chemistry all day because you enjoy doing it. And how much easier would it be to make money from something and do it consistently and sustainably if you enjoy doing it? The example I gave is you could create a YouTube channel and make cool creations or talk about reactions or whatever. My dad's a musician. He's passionate about music. It'd be a lot easier for him to be a music teacher, say on YouTube or some platform where it's easy for him to make products or provide his services, than if he tried to be, say, for example, a history teacher because it paid more. Does that make sense? In the long run, he or whoever, the chemistry teacher, whatever example you want to use, there's more upside and there's more to gain from doing things you enjoy doing rather than trying to force yourself to do things that you don't enjoy solely because it makes more money or solely because you think it's the proper path to take. Hopefully that makes sense. So the key takeaway from this is try to find ways to integrate things you enjoy with your work or your goals. Now, some people might sit there and ask themselves, well, if I have a certain type of job, how do I integrate what I like into my job or into my career? And this is what you have to kind of find out for yourself. It really just depends on what it is that you like. But the key takeaway is to try to find a way to integrate the things you enjoy with your career. Quick example, you're a real estate agent. Maybe you're a real estate agent that likes graphic design. Those two things don't necessarily go hand in hand, but perhaps you can make it go hand in hand. Perhaps with certain marketing with graphic design, you could elevate yourself to stand out more from other agents. Now you're combining real estate, maybe a career that you're not super stoked about, but it pays the bills, with graphic design, something you are stoked about. And because you're combining the two, how much easier do you think it'd be for that agent to be a more effective agent, to be a better agent? And there's some situations too. This is just me kind of giving a few more examples. There's some situations too where maybe you're the real estate agent, graphic designer, and you decide that graphic design takes less energy than the actual sales process. And maybe you can get someone else to help you sell. This is part of productivity. It's kind of you finding a way to achieve the results you want simpler and more efficiently. So, like I said, try to find ways to align your passions with the thing you do to make money or to achieve your goals. Hopefully this makes sense. Another quick example, in my personal business, this business productivity accelerator, I am aligning my passion for reading with the business. And so what I mean by that is In my own free time, I enjoy listening to podcasts about historical figures, about entrepreneurs, business owners, founders, just interesting people as a whole. The way I combine the two is I learn about these influential people. I learn about what makes them successful. I learn about what makes them productive. And I share these things with you in the form of a YouTube video. This is exactly what I'm doing now. I was reading about Naval Ravikant. I've heard about him for years. I like his content. And part of his content is about productivity. And so I'm sharing the things I've learned from him with you. I'm combining the two. Hopefully that makes sense. If it does or doesn't, let me know in the comments. I'll try to give more examples or make it make sense to you. So, one more thing too. I want to point this out because before I kind of go into the next concept, I think this is a big reason why people procrastinate. I've brought this up before. I usually tend to find two main reasons why people procrastinate. This is kind of a side tangent, but I think it's still useful to understand. Usually when I find people who procrastinate, two things come up. The first thing, they don't know if what they're going to do has the intended results. So it's kind of like if you're a student in school and you have a project that you have to do. You procrastinate because you don't see the purpose of the project. You don't understand if that project's going to lead to a goal that you have, if you even have a goal to start. Usually you have a goal in the back of your head, but you don't know if this project is going to lead to what you want down the line, which I totally understand. I think if you're a college student, you're taking a class. I remember I took this class, this like criminology class, like years ago when I was in college, and it was the teacher had this like long like paper that he wanted us to do. I couldn't even tell you this like to this day what the paper was on, but I remember thinking this is such a waste of time, and I don't understand like why we have to do a paper on this and why this couldn't just be just like a short essay. Like why does it need to be a 10-page paper? Why couldn't it just be a single page? Because it wasn't like a super complicated idea. I remember that much. So I procrastinated on it for a while, and I procrastinated because I didn't see the point in the work. I didn't think that 10-page paper was really going to lead to the results, the long-term results that I desired. Now, I know obviously you need to pass, you need to get a good score, to get good grades, to graduate, obviously. But in the grand scheme of things, there were other things I preferred doing. That paper seemed pointless. Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense. So that's one reason why people procrastinate. The second reason why people procrastinate, in my experience, is because the thing they're supposed to do is undesirable. It's almost like when someone forces a goal on you, you procrastinate because there's no point in you doing it. You don't really desire the outcome at all. And so you just don't do it. Another example, when I was in college, I've told the story before, but when I was in college, I saw a lot of students who started off as engineers and they dropped out of engineering, usually around sophomore year when you have to clear your major. And a lot of engineers would say they're dropping out because they're not smart enough to understand the concepts in engineering. Part of that could be true, but from my observation, really what it came down to is the people that were doing engineering, they just didn't like engineering. They didn't care about it. They were doing it because maybe their parents told them they should do it. Maybe society told them that it would pay them more money, whatever. But they didn't have a passion for it. They didn't like it. And if you don't like doing something, it's difficult to do it for a sustained period of time. And so they procrastinate. They don't actually do the work necessary. They don't actually go to class. They don't take the tests. They don't study. And because of all these combined things, they stop being engineers. Does that make sense? So again, you need to find things that line up with your long-term goals. You need to have a passion for something to a degree. Now, the next concept, master the art of saying no. I say this a lot. I've said this in a few different videos in the past, but when you're trying to grow, when you're trying to accomplish certain goals, you're going to notice tons of what I consider liabilities disguised as opportunities. And so what I mean by this is, say, for example, you're trying to start a company. You're trying to be an entrepreneur. There's going to be lots of things that seem like opportunities, things that you believe other people have not tried, or things that you don't believe other people are privy to or aware of. These are liabilities. These are not opportunities. This is kind of like when entrepreneurs get like shiny object syndrome. They start to see all these different opportunities come up to make money. In reality, if they just focus on one thing and said no to everything else, they'd get so much further ahead. I bring this up because this was a big lesson that I learned years ago. And it took me like a lot of times of me messing this up for me to learn this lesson. I know when I first moved to Northern Virginia, um, I had pretty much two main goals in mind. The first goal was to get my real estate license. And the second goal was at the time I was working on this, it was a drop shipping business for fitness apparel. And pretty much in my free time, those were the two main things I tried to focus on. Primarily was the drop shipping business because it was already up and it was actually making some money. The real estate license was secondary, but I was procrastinating. It took me a long time to finish the 60 hours required to take the test to eventually get licensed. And I kept seeing like opportunities pop up. At some point, I went to this one seminar and this guy was like, oh yeah, well, you don't need a real estate license. You can do wholesaling. And if you do wholesaling, it's much better. It's faster. You can make money. Went to these conferences, didn't end up going anywhere. And eventually, this one guy I met, he tried to get me into network marketing. And at the time, I thought, again, a cool opportunity, a faster way for me to make money. He dressed it up very well to make it seem like it was a very easy model to make money. Long story short, it wasn't. It was a big waste of time for me. It's not a good business model, in my personal opinion. I know some people out there make good use of it. If they do, that's cool for them. It's not for me, and I don't recommend it for most people. But long story short, I spent months going to all these different meetings they wanted me to go to, driving all over the place after my job. And really, in hindsight, I noticed I would have been a lot better off just focusing on my business, on the dropshipping business, and maybe for an hour or 2 hours a day, studying to do those 60 hours to move toward the goal of getting my real estate license. That would have been a much better use of my time. But I didn't use my time effectively because I didn't say no. I wasn't saying no to things. So I think you kind of need to truly audit how effective an opportunity presented to you will be when it comes to helping you reach your destination. And this isn't just about like opportunities. This is also just about people. Sometimes people will say like, hey, do you want to go party? Do you want to do A, B, and C? Do you want to go watch a movie? Do you want to just like waste time? Do you want to play video games? Whatever. I'm not saying you can't do those things, but you have to audit how much time you have in the day, free time, and you have to audit, are these things people invite me to worth doing? I'll say in my own life, people get mad at me for this, but I turn down a ton of things in my own life, like right here, right now. People invite me out to parties, I say no. People invite me to go to the movies a lot of times, I say no. People invite me to go like to a bar tour on the weekends, I say no. And sometimes I say yes, but a lot of times I say no. And the reason why I say no is because there are certain things I need to get done to move closer to my goals. And those things I need to do take priority over going to the movies or going to these parties or whatever. Does that make sense? So what I recommend you do, there's a few different kind of variables that I call them that you need to keep in mind when people present you with something. First thing is time. Does the thing someone presents you, like if someone's presenting you with an opportunity, does it help you achieve your goal faster? Second thing, this opportunity, does it require money up front? And again, does it help you get to your goal at all? Sometimes, people say, oh, I have this new opportunity. You'll make X amount of money in like 10 years. Well, is your goal to make X amount of money in 10 years, or is your goal to make X amount of money in like 2 years? If the goal is 2 years, not 10 years, then maybe this opportunity isn't an opportunity. Maybe it's a liability. Risk. How much risk is involved with this opportunity? And all these things are kind of more aligned with if you're in a career and someone's trying to present you an opportunity to advance your career, or if you're, say, for example, an entrepreneur and someone's trying to present you with an opportunity to make money. So these things kind of align with that. Learning curve. Is there a learning curve? Sometimes people try new opportunities and there's a steep learning curve. It takes years to actually understand the method itself to get the money or to get that career advancement. Is it worth it? Maybe. It depends. And of course, how aligned is it with your primary goal in the grand scheme of things? So sort of a quick story to kind of like illustrate this point. When I did real estate full time as just an active agent, before I was doing consulting, a lot of brokers would try to recruit me to their brokerage. And every broker tries to give you different incentives. Some brokers say, oh, well, our brokerage has leads that we give you. So you don't have to go generate your own leads. We give you leads. Others will say, oh, well, we don't take as much commission up front. Sometimes some brokerages, when you join, they split it 50-50. Sometimes they give you as an agent like 45 and they take 65. Some brokerages will try to market themselves and say, you get 80%, we'll get 20. Or we don't even take a commission. We get there's a flat fee that we charge per year. And beyond that flat fee, you get to keep 100% of what you make. There are always different pitches, always different offers, always different incentives. They were all misaligned with my long-term goals. And even recently, a few months ago, actually, this one real estate broker, she invited me to join her brokerage. And it was a new kind of brokerage. It was kind of cool because I think they do pay like a slight salary and they offer like stocks in the brokerage. It was a cool, different model. It was actually a pretty good model in the grand scheme of things. I turned it down though. And the reason why I turned it down is because it would require me to be an agent again, like a standard agent. And one of my long-term goals is to become what I call geographically agnostic. I'm not going to go deep into what that is. I've talked about in other videos. If you're interested, leave a comment and I'll answer it in the comments, or you can watch other videos where I talk about it. But my goal is to be geographically agnostic. And of course, if I'm tied to a certain county or if I'm tied to a certain state, I can't be geographically agnostic. So I turned it down. And it was a big company. It was founded by this dude named Sharon Srivatsa, super big like real estate agent, had lots of companies in the real estate industry. But I turned it down because it didn't align with my long-term goals. So I had to say no. So you should be doing the same in your own life. You need to master the art of saying no. Turn down the things that don't align with your goals. Now, the next concept, simplify decisions with mental models. And I say this a lot. Productivity in the grand scheme of things, when you really boil it down, all it comes down to is making good decisions daily. It's making good decisions consistently. What I tell people is there's two primary types of decisions. There's reversible decisions and irreversible decisions. And I try to evaluate the irreversible decisions as critically as possible. And I just want to give you tell you this as a caveat. It's not either or. There's a range. So, or I should say more of a spectrum. So imagine there's two sides. One side, there's reversible. The other side is irreversible. You can make a decision and it's somewhere along the spectrum of irreversible and reversible. So let me give you an example. Career choice. Career choice is more towards the irreversible side than reversible. Sure, you can always get a different career, but sometimes if you're in a career for a certain amount of years, it's difficult to stop being in that career and start a brand new career. Hopefully that makes sense. Who you have kids with. It's pretty irreversible. If you have kids with somebody, you can't take back the kids. You can't go back in time and undo your kids. Now, you don't have to be with that person forever. You could say divorce that person or not be in a relationship with that person, but the decision itself will still impact your life. So it's a pretty irreversible decision. Where you live, again, relatively irreversible. Not nearly as irreversible as career choice, and certainly not as irreversible as who you have kids with, but somewhat irreversible. Me personally, actually recently, I was planning on moving to Lynchburg. And one of the big issues with me moving to Lynchburg is that the money I would make in Lynchburg is significantly less than the money I make in Northern Virginia. So I just didn't move. So it's an irreversible decision. I could move somewhere else, but there's a lot to give up in me moving for the most part. Something that's not super irreversible, the food you eat per day. I see a lot of people and they sit there and take tons of time to decide what they want to eat every day. It doesn't really matter. If you eat a steak versus chicken, it doesn't impact your life that much. It's pretty reversible. Now, when I say reversible, you can't go back in time and undo the meal you had. But the point that I'm making is that it doesn't impact your life in any significant way. So it's pretty reversible. You can eat steak, at 9 a.m. and then decide that you regret eating steak and just never eat steak ever again. And at 1 p.m. eat chicken or broccoli or whatever. It doesn't matter. So this is what I mean when I say some decisions are reversible and some are irreversible. The more irreversible the decision is, the more it impacts your life down the line, and it's difficult to undo the results of the decision you made. The more critically you should evaluate that decision. Hopefully that makes sense. So having good mental models helps you make decisions more effectively. And if you're not familiar with what mental models are, pretty much mental models are representations of how things work. Um, they're sort of frameworks that help you understand and simplify the complexities of the world, is what I call it. And so there's three different mental models I want to share with you. I'm going to go through these really fast. They can be a bit complicated, but I'm going to try my best to simplify them as much as possible. And so these three different types of mental models, the first one is first principles thinking. The second is opportunity cost. And the third is inversion. So first principles we're going to go into first. What first principles means is it's sort of the idea of breaking down a complex problem into its basic element and then build a solution from the ground up. So an example of this, if you've seen my following on YouTube, at least at the time of this video, it's not very good. It's pretty low. I have like 500 subscribers. And I think throughout this year is the first year I've really tried to take YouTube somewhat seriously. I think I grew to about 300 subscribers in like March, and it's been like a slow creep ever since then. Currently we're in August. So I try to find ways to get more views, of course, but also get more retention and just become a better creator for my intended audience. I'm trying to find a certain type of audience, of course. So over the year, like throughout the year, I always try to reduce things down to first principles when it comes to improving my YouTube channel. And I try to figure out what is it that I can do and what is it that I can't do or shouldn't do. For example, to grow on YouTube, do I need to have heavily edited videos? And the answer I found out was no. There are plenty of people on YouTube who have hundreds of thousands, even millions of subscribers that have super basic videos. And when I say basic, like more basic than this, basic in the sense that it's just a voiceover and they have like a random stock image and that's the whole video. Super basic, but they have like 1 million subscribers. So to answer my question, do they need to have heavily edited videos? No. Therefore, I can also not have heavily edited videos and still achieve a similar outcome. Do I need to use AI? Some people on YouTube will say you need to use AI nowadays. Do they? Does everyone who has a big following use AI? No. Okay. So you don't have to use AI. Do you have to have a posting schedule? No. There are definitely some creators out there who just post haphazardly, some that post 5 times a week, some that post 1 time a month. Is a posting schedule necessary? Does it need to be consistent? No, I haven't seen it to be true. Do I need to have perfectly articulated videos? No. I've seen tons of creators that can make a video and they wing it. There seems to be no script. They say, they're just sitting in like a random field with just a camera. The camera quality doesn't need to be good, but they grow big audiences. I've seen some channels that have been doing the exact same format for years. They've changed nothing and they still grow. So does the video need to be perfect? Does it need to have the best quality? No, it doesn't. So this is an example of reducing decision-making down to first principles. You reduce a complex problem, in my case, how to grow a big YouTube channel, to the simplest components. And then you ask yourself, does this need to be true? Yes or no? And then you build from there. Once you kind of get data, once you kind of get your answers from these basic, simple questions, this is how you start to make big decisions. And for the record, this is why I started to do this format, because it's a simple format. It's easy for me to make these types of videos. This is like a side tangent, but super simple for me to make these types of videos. I think for the intended audience, it gives a lot of value, easy to edit, and it's sustainable. So second mental model, opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the idea that every choice you make has a cost in terms of the next best alternative that you're giving up. So this is a big one, and I'm not going to go on a rant. I'm going to try my best not to go on a rant. But for anyone that's watched any of my videos ever, if you've followed me for any significant period of time, you'll probably hear me talk about how much I hate college. And I talk about it a lot because I really dislike college. I think college is one of the worst things nowadays. It wasn't always bad, but nowadays it's terrible. I dislike it. I think most people shouldn't go for the most part. And one of the big reasons why I dislike college is because of opportunity cost. A lot of people spend lots of money in the form of a loan to go to college, to not learn very much, to not be suitable for the job market once they graduate, but to still be in significant debt, which keeps them, and you might disagree with this if you're watching this, a lot of people disagree with me, but it keeps them from really being innovative and really building up a good future for themselves. Whereas You could do something else, like become a real estate agent, get into sales, do a trade, like go to trade school, just go to community college and just get a simple associate's degree and at least start working earlier without debt. There's lots of things you could do instead of going to college to get the results you want faster and in a more sustainable way. So this is an example of opportunity cost, pretty much. There's a lot of opportunity lost in spending 4, 6, 8, 10 years in college when you could just get to work right away. Does that make sense? I don't want to get super deep into like the college thing because that's a separate topic in itself. But hopefully you understand what I mean when I say opportunity costs. Pretty much whenever you make a decision, you have to understand that you're giving up something else in order to make this decision. And you have to really rationalize how much you're giving up. Third concept, inversion. Inversion is the idea of trying to solve a problem by flipping the desire and kind of giving answers for the opposite of what you want. So just to make this simple, an example that you should keep in mind, if you're trying to get in shape and you don't know what to do, don't ask yourself, how do I get in better shape? Ask yourself, how do I get fat? How do I stay in terrible shape? And you answer those questions instead. Does that make sense? So you're trying to get in shape. You ask yourself, how do I get fat instead? How do I get fat? I eat too many calories. I don't exercise. I sit around all day. I binge watch TV. You start answering the inverted question, how do I get fat? And once you answer those questions and you make a list of those answers, you do the opposite to get the opposite result. So once you answer the questions of how to get fat, you do the opposite of how to get fat. And by doing the opposite, that'll lead you to getting fat. You'll be fit. Does that make sense? So again, just to kind of make you understand this point, if you want to get in shape, you ask yourself, how do I get fat? You make a list of the things that will lead to you getting fat. I don't go outside. I don't exercise. I eat like shit. Okay, so do the opposite if you want to get in shape. Exercise to get in shape. Eat healthy to be healthy. Does that make sense? It's just a way to kind of take what should be a complex idea or a complex question that you might not have the answer to and find a way to force an answer. So those are the 3 mental models that you should keep in mind if you want to make good quality decisions. And of course, with these good quality decisions leads to more productivity. This is a big one. This is the 5th concept that I want to share with you. Prioritizing health for sustained productivity. One of the things I say a lot is whatever problems you have in the mind can be solved with the body. Whatever problems you have in the body can be solved with the mind. I tend to find, and this is generally speaking, but I tend to find that if people have, say, problems with their physical health, you're overweight, you feel stiff, you have back problems, the mind can help you solve those problems. You need to find a way to solve those problems mentally by thinking strategically. You feel stiff, you can read books to understand how to stretch more effectively. You feel weak, you can read books to understand kinesiology and find ways to build more muscle in the gym, find more ways to work out more effectively. If the reverse is true, if you feel, say, for example, depressed, then using your body more, going outside, getting more vitamin D, exercising more, could alleviate that feeling. It could alleviate that mental issue. This is a very general idea and a very general example, but the key that I want you to keep in mind is that health is linked to the mind and the body simultaneously. Both of those need to be in tip-top shape for you to truly be productive. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Because really, if you want to be productive, you need to have a high quality of mental health. You need to have high energy. You need to have high clarity. You need to have high focus. You need all of these things to be productive. If you don't have any of these things, you can't be productive. You can't get more done in less time. So this is what I recommend if you're trying to get healthy and just trying to stay in better shape in general. What I'm going to suggest to you is not going to help you become like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's not going to help you gain like crazy pounds of muscle. It's not that deep because it doesn't need to be. Those are the extremes. You don't need to take it to the extremes. Really what I recommend is 4 things. Number 1, maintain a basic workout regimen 3 to 5 times a week. When I say basic workout regimen, I mean it could be as simple as walking outside for, say, 20 minutes to an hour, 3 times a week, 5 times a week, whatever. It could be going to the gym and working out, but it doesn't need to be that extreme. Not everyone wants to look like a bodybuilder. I totally understand that, and it's not necessary. But simply moving around more simply having a dedicated schedule to physical activity is effective. That's one of the most effective things you can do. Second thing, don't burn yourself out. A lot of people, I will admit, we live in sort of a toxic productivity culture, especially if you live in America, where the idea of work, it's almost like you need to be working 24/7 to be somebody. I don't think that's the healthiest solution. I think if you take time off for yourself to relax, that in itself is a form of productivity. Because, and this is something I've learned from personal experience. If you work too hard and try to force yourself to do too much work in too short of a time period, you will burn out because you won't achieve any results fast enough. You won't achieve the desired results fast enough. You'll burn yourself out. And the problem with burnout is a lot of times the burnout lasts for a long period of time. So if you burn yourself out for, say, a month, 2 months, 3 months, that's 1 to 3 months that you could have been working that you can't work. Does that make sense? It's kind of a similar philosophy to working out at the gym. If you try to go to the gym and you try to do too much in a single session, you could injure your muscle. Now, if you're being casual about it and you're, working out moderately, let's say, you could work out 3 to 5 times a week, like I recommend, and you can do this routine for an entire year without injury. But if you go too hard, too fast, and try to do 3 days of, 3 days worth of working out in a single day, you burn yourself out. You burn out your nervous system. You injure yourself. And maybe for a month, you can't go back to the gym. I've had friends who do that. They try to work out too hard. They try to push too much weight too quickly, and they hurt their hip, or they hurt their leg, or they break their foot, something like that, or they tear a bicep, tear a muscle, and then they're out for a whole year because they can't work out because they have to get a surgery. Then they have to do physical therapy. They have to rejuvenate themselves. And then for a whole year, they can't lift. They can't do what they want to do. And by the time they're able to start going back to the gym in this hypothetical situation, they've almost gone past, where they first started. Maybe they were in decent shape to start and they started working out too hard, then they hurt themselves. Now they're super skinny and thin because all their muscles have atrophied. Same thing is true with burning out and working too hard. If you work too hard in your own life, you can burn yourself out, and the long-term results might put you back further than where you first began. So I don't recommend doing that. Resting, taking time off, playing video games, doing whatever it is you need to do to decompress is in itself a form of productivity because it follows the rule of sustainable progress. Next thing, healthy diet. The things you eat, in my experience, influence the way you think. Imagine drinking. If you drink alcohol all the time, you're always going to be lightheaded, foggy brained. You're not going to be really you're not going to have a lot of clarity. If you eat good foods, if you eat healthy meats, vegetables, fruits, whatever, you can think more effectively. You can think more clearly. You have a lot more focus. You have a lot more energy. You can do more things throughout the day. Productivity. So getting a healthy diet is key. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what a healthy diet is. I think that's a whole video topic in itself. For stuff like this too, by the way, I have a program called the Better Life Blueprint. I go deeper into all of these topics. If you want to check it out, I think there's a link to it in my description below. But I think you know what a healthy diet in general is. Cut back on the fast food, cut back on the processed stuff to the best of your ability. Finally, get more sleep. And I'm guilty of this a lot, but don't slack on your sleep. The sleep thing is a bit of a weird area for me because I think that some of the things that modern science teaches about sleep is a bit incorrect. Usually I've seen different studies, but some studies recommend 7 to 8 hours. I've seen some that recommend 8 to 9 hours. I've seen some that recommend 6 to 8 hours. I think you have to kind of get a feel for how much sleep feels the best for you. For me personally, 5 to 6 hours is perfect. Any more, I feel groggy throughout the day. Any less, I feel groggy and anxious and grumpy throughout the day. 5 to 6 is my sweet spot. For some people, it's going to be 9 hours. For some people, it's 7 hours. For some people, 8 hours, whatever. Everyone's different. But the thing to keep in mind is just get enough sleep to the point where you feel clear, to the point where you don't feel angry or groggy or, that you don't lack that clarity to do the things that you want to do throughout the day. And then the final concept, maximize efficiency through automation and delegation. This is another big one we've kind of talked about leverage already, and this is basically a form of leverage. But I tend to find a lot of people don't automate things, even though automation can be simple to do, and they don't delegate things. So kind of a classic example of this. It's the business owner that tries to do everything on their own. And I've seen this happen a lot. You see a business owner and they try to do like everything. And it's like, instead of doing everything and getting very little done because you're stretching yourself too thin, just delegate certain tasks to other people, automate things. Quick story. When I was doing Meeting Virginia, which is the podcast that I used to host, I tried to do everything. I would try to reach out to the guests. I try to find guests, reach out to them, get coffee with them to explain the concept of the podcast. I would set up all the equipment, do the audio engineering, like while I'm doing the podcast, like really while I'm doing the interview, edit the video myself. It was super overwhelming because there's so much stuff to do and it eats up so much time. It's not that productive. And eventually what I did is I hired a video editor, and the video editor freed up so much time for me. Like I told you earlier in the video, editing takes so much time. I think for an hour-long Meeting Virginia podcast episode, it would take me like 3 or 4 hours, mainly because I'm just editing like the different camera angles. It would just take so long. So by outsourcing and by delegating video editing to someone else, I would save like 4 hours. And of course, with that 4 hours saved, that's 4 more hours that I can use to get a new guest, to schedule a new podcast episode, to do something else if I just wanted to have free time, whatever. It's 4 hours I freed up for myself. So automate things when possible and delegate things when possible. Find other people to do things on your behalf. Again, it's similar to leverage. It's essentially the same thing. But a lot of people don't do it, which is why I want to bring it up, specifically as delegation and automation. So some of the things I recommend you do, if you have tasks that are repetitive, outsource it or automate it. So example of this, and I do this in my own life, paying off credit cards. I've seen people who actively pay off their credit cards whenever the credit card statements due. Like they'll go into their app and they'll pay it off. And my thing is, why pay off things manually and waste time when you can just set your banking app to pay a bill for you? Like it's already done. You won't miss it. You don't have to think about it. So it's less stuff, to take up bandwidth. It's simpler and it's easier. In every way, it's a better thing to do. So why not just do it? That's just one example. If you have repetitive tasks in your own life, find a way to automate it or delegate it. Automation tools. What I do for my newsletter, sometimes people will buy one of my products. Sometimes people will download one of my different products or guides. And whenever I do that, I collect their email. And so whenever I collect their email, what I used to do in the past is I would manually put their email into I use MailChimp. If you're not familiar with that, don't worry about it. But MailChimp is pretty much, it just collects emails so you can send newsletters. I'd manually put their emails into my MailChimp, and it would take so long to log in, go to the menu where you can manually input emails, type in the email, type in their name, make sure all the information is correct. It wastes time. Eventually, I'd use Zapier. Zapier is an automation tool. Pretty much you can kind of create what's called zaps. And in this situation, what I do is whenever someone downloads one of my products or puts in their email, it zaps their first name and their email address straight to my MailChimp newsletter automatically. I don't have to think about it. I see when it does it, so I can always monitor it, but I don't have to actively put it in. And it takes this process of the zap takes like seconds. So I'm saving minutes by doing this simple thing. It took me like 10 minutes to set up, and it saved me exponential minutes down the line. Or I should say over the long run. Delegate non-core activities. I've already kind of talked about this, so hopefully you understand this concept of delegation. And this is another big one that I think people should do. Create standard operating procedures when possible. So now, if you're not familiar with an SOP, a standard operating procedure, it's pretty much just a system of how you're going to carry out certain tasks. So, quick example, something that you might be familiar with. If you've ever gone to McDonald's, you pull up to the window and someone usually says, "Welcome to McDonald's. Would you like to try whatever?" Or nowadays they say, "Would you like to try the mobile app?" This is an example of a standard operating procedure. No matter which McDonald's you go to, they all say the same thing. because it's a system. It's something they do that becomes like a habit that guarantees a certain result. And because they don't have to think about it, and because it's already set for them to do, it's efficient, it's productive. So in your own life, I recommend creating standard operating procedures. You don't have to be a business owner to do this. This is usually for businesses, but you don't have to be a business owner to create these standard operating procedures. You could, and this is what I recommend most people do, just use a planner and create an outline of your day. That's the same as a standard operating procedure. It makes sure that it guarantees you don't have to think too much about what the day entails. And it guarantees you get to do the things you need to get done. It optimizes it. Hopefully that makes sense. Just one more thing that I always share. Sometimes this pisses people off, but I don't like to buy groceries. I've done the math on how long it takes me to buy groceries, and it usually takes me like 1 to about 2 hours. If you include like getting in the car, driving to the grocery store, going through the aisles, picking up the groceries, waiting in line, packing it all up in like a bag, putting it back in your car, driving it back home, pulling it out of your car, taking it to the fridge. It takes a lot of time. And it's time that you could spend doing something else. It's time that I like to spend doing other things. So I don't like to buy groceries. I usually outsource it. I use an app. It's super cheap. They just go buy the groceries for me. I pay exactly what I would have paid buying groceries. They charge me like $5 to do it. Super cheap, super easy, saves me tons of time. This is an example of delegation and kind of an example of automation, because I do it so I kind of get groceries like usually on weekends every single week. So that's what I do. A lot of people get mad that I say that, but I recommend it. It saves a lot of time, and I don't like grocery shopping. So why should you do things that you don't enjoy? It's not my passion to go grocery shopping. But yeah, so these are sort of the 6 different concepts to share. Just kind of go back and give a brief recap. Use leverage to multiply your output. 2, work on the things that you love. 3, master the art of saying no. 4, prioritize health for sustained productivity. 5, maximize efficiency through automation. 6, simplify decisions with mental models. So hopefully these all make sense. If they don't, or if you have any more questions, like I said, feel free to leave them down below in the comments. I answer all of my comments. If you want to leave me a DM or an email, shoot me one of those and I'll be sure to reach out and answer those as well. And then finally, I mentioned this before, but I want to say it again, quick plug. If you're a busy young professional and you're trying to level up this year, if you're trying to get more stuff done in less time and be more productive, check out this 3P framework. Check out this video. It's free. There's no risk in you doing this. It's a 30-minute video. It's really like 24 minutes, but I'm rounding up. Super short. You can put it on like 1.25 speed if you want, 1.5 speed, 2x speed if you can, if you're a G like that, whatever. But it walks you through my simple framework to get more stuff done in less time. It's free. Once you watch it, I guarantee you're going to start like destroying your goals right away. But yeah, that's it for the video. Please leave a like if you like the video. Please share it with other people that might get some value out of this. And like I said, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. It means a lot for me and it helps with the algorithm. But until the next video, I'll see you. Peace out. Bye.